Tyrann calling wildfire. Oh, hey, sorry. I got my 70s playlist on, and, I get caught up in my 70s music.
So caught up.
Well, it's good stuff.
It is good stuff. Speaking of good stuff.
It's time for the EduTech Guys.
You're listening to the EduTech Guys. EduTechGuys.com.
Listen to us now.
Hey, there you go. Welcome to the EduTech Guys. I'm David Henderson.
I'm Jeff Madlock.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, turning on, downloading, grabbing the episode, all the good stuff.
Do like me and have a whole lot of sugar before the interview, and then you can just be crazy. Oh, yes. But hey, check us out on the web at EduTech Guys. We're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
Yeah. Because it's like that song from the 80s, Who's Watching Me? Or remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Someone's watching. Who's watching?
I always feel like...
Yeah. The EduTech Guys are watching me. That's it. That's us. We're watching you.
Except we're a podcast, so we're listening.
That's just... No,
actually, we're not listening. You're listening. Are you listening?
We always go off the rails, but this time we just went, hey, you know what? I pulled out of the garage, back through the neighbor's yard, and hit a tree. We're just off the rails completely at this point.
Knocking over light poles.
Hey, we hope you're having a good time out there. I guess it's getting we're into fall. Down here in Southwest Arkansas, it's still 340 degrees because it's the 12th summer, fake fall. 7th spring,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. This is the place where you put on a sweater in the morning and you regret it by like noon.
What's really crazy about being in this area in the fall is the trees are basically in one of two states. They're either dropping their green leaves or the leaves are completely brown. Like we miss the whole color thing. It's just green or brown and they're all over the ground.
Yeah. I was driving yesterday. I was driving in deep Southwest Arkansas, one of the 2-lane roads, back in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And it was just luscious green, because we've had a little cool weather here.
Yeah.
And then the sun comes back out. It warms up into the 80s, and the poor vegetation goes, is it spring? And then all of a sudden they woke up one morning. Oh, wake up. We missed it. We're supposed to be dead. And the leaf died.
Yes. That's right.
Well, we didn't change color. Don't worry about it. Die. Everyone fall off the tree.
It is so crazy.
It is crazy around here. And that means that you're getting closer to, you've probably finished your first 9 weeks, or you're getting close to your first trimester or something, something's going down. But hopefully you haven't started what am I talking? We're always testing. That's all we do in education anymore is test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what's 1 + 1?
2?
There you go. Good.
Listen, you can't catch me off guard like that. What's with you and the math?
Well, it's the new math, so 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2
I'm
anymore.
sorry, you're right. I should not assume that 1 + 1.
I've got a bag of circles here that I'm going to lay down on the table for you. I'll be honest, I walk by those kindergarten first grade classrooms. I'm like, oh man, I would be deep water in here.
That's right.
It's that one with Adam Sandler where he has to go back to school. That would have been me. Like, oh, I better just wet my pants to get out of this one. That's what sent Jeff to the office. Thought I was going to have to read in front of the class.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that brings back so many memories, man. Just reading in front of the class. For those of us, those listeners, and maybe you're one of them, who went through that era of schooling where, you had to read a sentence or a paragraph out loud. And so you'd like map out where you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but invariably somewhere things would get off. And so I had like prepared the wrong thing. And it my turn. I'm like, I didn't know we were on page 27. Wait, I thought we were on.
I was right before you. I was reading the paragraph right before you. And I went into your paragraph by 3 sentences. And the teacher was like, well, it's Jeff. Just let him keep reading, and that just throws David off, and then it throws everybody's like, oh gosh, I got to catch back up. Where do I come in? Do I read my paragraph, or am I too? Yeah, I get it.
And that's why Jeff got beat up after.
That's why Jeff got
for reading.
But let me tell you, that was the most entertaining paragraph you ever heard.
That's right.
I was really putting it down there. Hey, we got a great guest for you today. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff. Are you ready to travel? Are you ready to do it from the comfort of your own classroom? We're about to learn about, the real world and, what's going on in other cultures. But I got all serious all of a sudden.
I know you did. I don't know what happened there, but sometimes it's the way the train goes.
That's exactly right. Now, right now, the train's about to pull into the ad station. So you stick around and take a listen to this. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the EduTech Guys. Real excited to have our next guest in the seat. We're going to let him introduce himself, tell us who he is, what he does, and all that kind of good stuff. So here we go.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Seth Fleischauer. I'm the founder and president of Banyan Global Learning. We are a company that's been around now for, 16 years. I started it when I was a public school teacher in New York City, and I taught abroad in Taipei, Taiwan, and really loved what I was doing out there. They wanted me to stay, but I had some ties back in the U.S., and so I pitched them an idea to continue teaching for them using a newfangled technology called video conferencing, and the rest is history. So we do a lot of live video teaching, and our curricula is in the area of like cultural competencies and digital competencies through a global lens. So it's a lot of stuff that we think is incredibly important, but is getting largely ignored in schools. Thus, here we are to provide it. So I've been doing this for the past 16 years. I'm also a podcaster. I have 2 podcasts. One of them is called Why Distance Learning, which we were chatting about it before we started recording here. But, essentially emergency learning happened during the pandemic. That's not distance learning. Everybody thinks that's distance learning, but we have a podcast that's dedicated to dispelling that myth. It's been around for a really long time. If you include correspondence courses, it's been around for hundreds of years. But there's a lot of really smart, really thoughtful professionals who've been in the industry for a long time, who know how to provide really meaningful learning experiences and provide it the access to those experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise. So one podcast is all about that. The other one's called Make It Mindful, and it is a podcast that applies a mindfulness lens to education, asks people to kind of take a step back and be a bit more objective about what's happening so that we can not just be on autopilot, but put some real thoughtful intention into what we're doing in the classroom. So I interview change makers, and I try to really understand what it is that they're doing, why it works, and how we can funnel that down into practical transformative solutions for teaching. And I love podcasting. It's so much fun. We chatted a bit about it before we started recording here. It's just meeting people, getting into the flow, and really trying to get to the bottom of things. These are all things that I really, really enjoy doing. So I'm happy to be here today and have you guys do that to me. Talk about what I do.
So you get to be on that side of it now. That's right. Yeah. So getting back to the focus on Banyan, is it primarily distance learning for Taiwanese? I mean, is that the primary?
Is that how it started?
Function? Well, I know that's how it started because that's what you said. But so even today, is that the primary focus still, or what does that look like?
So no, while much of our efforts go towards supporting our clients in Asia, because those are our main clients, we are focusing on growing here in the U.S. This is a decision that we made about 5 years ago when we were about 10 years old. You'll notice the timing there. It was right before the pandemic started.
Yeah. Great time to launch into something new, right?
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, good call. But we learned a lot along the way. Initially, we were like, okay, our clients in Asia are in Asia. It started out of this relationship that I had, and but then we grew at that client and at their sister schools. But to be able to grow beyond that really required some boots on the ground, and we didn't have those. All of our teachers were in the U.S. because part of the value that we provide to our schools in Asia is Western teacher, Western culture. We're providing them with really some pedagogy that requires them to think differently than they do with a lot of their Eastern pedagogy. But around 5 years ago, it was like, okay, well, all of our boots are on the ground here in America. Like, what can we do that will provide value here? And at that time, the most popular part of our daily distance learning program were these live virtual field trips focused on global citizenship. We started doing those pretty soon after that. The entire world fell apart. Very confusing time to be in distance learning. There's a lot of like, are we like for parents now? Like what is this? But what we learned along the way is that some of the subject areas that we were already teaching were ones that had names that we didn't know. One of those was like social emotional learning. I responded to the needs of my daughter and her friends who were suddenly isolated from their peers, and I knew how to use Zoom. Nobody else did, so I just started running social calls, and then we started doing them for her class and then for her school. And then all of a sudden it was for parents who were at home. And we had this thing called shelter in place superheroes, where kids were talking about their feelings and sharing their superpowers as they were, again, all of a sudden isolated from their peers during this really challenging time. And we realized that a lot of the work that we'd been doing in global citizenship really related to social emotional learning. We also realized that because we were delivering that digitally, that digital citizenship was a huge part of what we were already teaching. We just didn't have a name for it. And now where we are is in acknowledging that these subject areas are all intertwined. There's a very fuzzy line between real life and digital life, especially for young people. And there are global competencies that get drawn into that, where you are required, if you're going to be successful in this world, you are required to operate interculturally. And that can be done without ever leaving the United States. We have a whole lot of different cultures that are represented here. Now, geographically speaking, some of these cultures are becoming a little bit more homogenous, right? As we become more polarized, people tend to seek out neighbors who are like them. And so one of the things that we're really looking to combat is that isolation, that cultural isolation that I think a lot of students are feeling, and getting people to connect with people who are not like them. Of course, you can't just like throw them into a situation where that's happening and hope. Well, I guess you could hope for the best, but it's better to be a little bit more mindful about it. So how do we prepare students to operate interculturally? How do we prepare them to operate in a world where there is this fuzzy line between digital life and IRL? So we don't really treat these things as like siloed subject areas anymore. We teach them all as like one thing that's very interrelated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was the aha moment for you? You went, hey, wait, I'm back in the U.S. Wait a second, I can do this and then add this to it. I mean, you're hitting so many points here. You guys do so much. And it's, I was visiting your website, doing research yesterday, and wow, you guys do a lot of stuff. It's almost a little overwhelming, especially let's talk about that into your aha moment that happened for you as an educator. And when you built this and then you went, wait, I can do this way. Was it also one of those things where you went, I see this growing in the future, leaps and bounds as technology changes? Because you strike me as the person who goes, okay, technology is going to only get stronger and better, and we're going to have this ability to really grow this out in the future. I just have to keep building on it till the technology catches up with me. Does that make sense? Did you have that aha moment? So a lot of our listeners are like that, especially as a classroom teacher. Do you remember? We all remember the moment where you were teaching a class and you went, oh, this is how you teach. You know what I mean? You have that moment. Did you have that moment with this before? Was it there or here that you had that moment and you realized, wait a second, I can make this work worldwide, here in the U.S., there, Kuala Lumpur, Australia, it doesn't matter. I can make this happen. Can you speak to that? Because I think our listeners will be real interesting about your development and how that happened as an educator and a developer.
Yeah, I think that the answer is one of 1,000 little steps that required a lot of just kind of stepping back and paying attention, right? It was a lot of little wins that and little magic moments that would happen in the classroom with students where you're just like, oh, whoa, like this is what's resonating there. Yeah. And so with our students in Asia, one of the first things that was like a real aha moment was we called them 4G field trips back then, because the 4G network was the first network that was strong enough to have to be able to do video conferencing from outside of the classroom. When I first started this company, I had to drive from New York City, where I was teaching, out to Long Island to get access to the codec machine that I needed in order to be able to make the video conferencing call. school.
Yeah.
Right. Like it was like an hour and a half commute to get to a machine. Like
This guy would do that too. He had some stuff.
And so in the beginning, it was just we were connecting with the students in Asia, and that part was just really cool. Just the fact that we could operate interculturally, cross-culturally, cross an ocean at all was incredible.
Yeah.
But then when the 4G network came out, and I realized, just calling someone on FaceTime, I was like, oh, whoa, like I can take my students into the world now. Mm-hmm. And so the first one we did was just at the Starbucks downstairs from our office in Los Angeles, where I was like, you guys have Starbucks, we have Starbucks. It's probably a little bit different here than it is there. In fact, I know that it is because I've been to your Starbucks. So like, let's dive into that. Let's just see how life is just a little bit the same and a little bit different everywhere you go. And I think the more opportunities that you have like that as a student, the less fearful you'll be, the less ignorant you'll be, the more curious you'll be, the more you recognize that there are things that bind us all together, but that there are also these things about us that are unique that make up our own identity. And so there's a whole lot of aha moments that came in just there. In terms of like operating outside of Asia, again, it was that sort of boots on the ground thing. It was like, okay, we've grown to the extent that we're going to, like, we were so busy in the first 10 years that I couldn't even possibly imagine trying to do this in America as well. Like it was just, we were just churning stuff out. Everything that the school and their sister schools asked us to do, we did it. But then we kind of had grown to the extent that we were going to grow there. And we're like, okay, where are we looking next? And boots on the ground in America, there's some stuff here that I think will really resonate. So let's see if we can get this stuff out there. And we did it through CILC.org. Mm-hmm. It's a Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, who are actually my co-hosts for the Why Distance Learning podcast.
Cool.
And so we started doing some of their community of learning events and connecting with classrooms who were interested in global citizenship. But I'm telling you, dude, it was like 2 months before that we were doing that before the pandemic hit. And then it was like, okay, wow, we've been teaching some social competencies to our students in Asia over video conferencing because we've needed to do that in order to build classroom culture, right? Like we had to be incredibly intentional about how we were building up these skills because we were asking these students not only to engage in a cross-cultural experiment, but also one that was inherently digital. And so how do we build that into something? I mean, we're making it up as we went along. And so we realized, okay, we have these competencies. And now during the pandemic, there are all of a sudden screens are being, thrown in front of students that never would have imagined having screens in front of them before, kindergartners, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's all of a sudden there's this incredible need to teach students about how to live a digital life way younger than we ever anticipated they were going to need to. And as you know, the screens didn't get taken away, right? Like they are still there. There are all sorts of like private uses of technology that I think make up really the majority of what we talk about with digital citizenship, because that's where a lot of the choice comes in. How are the students going to navigate social media? How are they going to navigate media literacy and understanding what's real and what's not? How are some of our leaders going to understand what's real and what's not? Right? Adults need this stuff too. And we have programs for adults. That was another big aha moment, was like, oh my gosh, especially with digital citizenship, like adults are a huge part of the problem when it comes to how students are experiencing their digital lives. There's a whole lot of like, hey, get off your screen, says the parent who is scrolling mindlessly on Instagram. Right. Like a lot of that stuff happening. And so we basically just looked around, answered the call, experimented. Luckily, we have this steady client that we've had for a really long time that allows us to experiment in ways that a lot of other companies maybe haven't as much when they have less of a runway because they don't have an established client that is like bringing in enough to be able to like have you reinvest in some of the growth of the company. And so yeah, I think does that answer your question? I feel like it does. I got to some of it.
Well, it's such a multifaceted, thing that, yes, you did. And it helped me actually get to, so the way I look, we're from a very rural school district. We have 2,400 kids in this school district in Hope, Arkansas. We're right in the corner of Arkansas. So, and you know, when you go to the website, the first thing I notice is innovative virtual learning, expert teacher training, and customized curriculum development. So the kicker is and I love what you guys have at the end, by engaging students by connecting them to new places, ideas, and opportunities for growth. So I'm a principal at a high school with 600 kids in it in Southwest Arkansas. I'm a superintendent of a district with 1,200 kids in it in Southwest Arkansas or Northwest Louisiana, or this area. I need my kids to know more about the world than what they see on Instagram and TikTok, because they're trying to bring in this weird social element into their lives in this little school district that has nothing to do with this. And I need you guys to help me develop curriculum and engage my students to bring them into the real world. Let's talk about that. Jump into that for us. Like, what's going to do that for me? And I need you guys to train my teachers and engage my students and change the whole dynamic. That's what's happening with what they get from the phone or from the Chromebook, and what's going to really impact them to where they stay here and bring better things, or they leave me and go off into the world and do great things. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you are like a dream of a principal. I love you.
They exist, though. I can tell you those folks are out there. They really are.
How do I find them?
Yeah. Well, this is, that's a great question. I mean, this is going to take us down a cool, rabbit hole, but let's do it. They exist. I know some really young superintendents and some really young principals that they think this way. They get caught in the educational machine. And they're so caught in test scores and the R's and let's reading, writing, arithmetic, this bad boy, and let's get I have to jump into this same thing. But they see the same thing and they go, I want to make this big change. But the thing that has to happen is when you bring it to a faculty where you have, as one of my superintendents used to say, retreads, that they've been here 35 years. And you've got the young ones who are scared to death. You've got the middle of the road ones who are going, okay, I've made it over the top and I'm coming over the hill now. I got to keep my gig. You've got parents and school board members, but you've got to come in and show them and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it consistently, and this is what it's going to bring us. So to me, that's where we are with educational service companies and any kind of curriculum company and anything like that. You've got to bring to me something that shows my blue collar worker family in rural Arkansas, this is why we need this. This changed my child's life, this way. They got so engaged. All they talking about is learning to speak French and doing this, or learning to code in this because they want to work in Korea, or they want to work on the California coast because they want to do this, or that kind of thing. Like, I saw this in Montana, and I want to go to work for the state parks of Montana or the national parks here because I got to see this happening and talk to these people there, because that's what distance learning was all about in the first place. Is like bringing into stuff that I'm never going to happen to me here. So yes, they exist. When you run into that one, what do you guys say, hey, this is it? Because it's like that elevator pitch. I've only got 45 seconds in the hallway at ISTE to get this across to you before you're going to disappear down the road. That's a hard one. I know it's a real hard one.
Yeah. I mean, and in terms of the elevator pitch, like I don't want to say I don't believe in them, but like any meaningful conversation is going to be more than 45 seconds, right?
Right.
How do I draw their attention in the beginning?
You got to hook them first, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of want to get a sense of like, is this a hopeful person or a fearful person?
Right. Yes.
Because there are two kind of different approaches, right? With a hopeful person, it's a shorter version of what you just talked about, right? It's the fact that we are embarking in an era where the only thing that is certain is uncertainty, and how do we prepare our students to navigate that uncertainty in a way that's going to make them successful in the future? Yeah. It involves digital competencies, cultural competencies, global competencies, things that you probably aren't doing yet. Right. So that would be like a simple thing. If unfortunately, many of the schools that where a decision is coming from a principal level in regards to especially digital citizenship, they're reacting to something bad that happened.
You're exactly right.
Right. So it's like, okay, this thing happened, this cyberbullying's happening, or like, this sexting is going on campus, or, AI, deep fakes, like all of a sudden they're in a pile of doo-doo and they're trying to do some damage control.
Right.
And fear is a great motivator for action.
I was about
right?
to say the fear is you actually, when you meet someone, you want them to have a fear, because if you can alleviate that, if you can fix that, whether it's a child or a student or a parent or whatever, that's the moment that they're like, okay, you're the person that's going to lead me down this dark hallway. So I agree with you right there. That's true.
And I think that most educators, whether they be teachers or principals or district levels, they acknowledge that, especially in the digital realm, that it feels like we should be doing something that we're not doing.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of this like intuition that schools have a role in society to prepare students for the future. Different people have different sort of philosophies about how involved they should be, especially when it comes to the decisions that they're making at home.
Yeah.
But because of the blurry lines between digital and real life, the way that, my daughter's 11, right? She has friends that she met at school, and then she comes home and she has a text chain where there's like 7 kids on that text chain. And they are having social experiences that the 3 of us never had when we were young.
Yeah.
Because it is text based. And it is massive, right? There's 7 people in the room, not just 2. And so that is a different type of social situation to navigate. And I think that on a fundamental level, adults are looking at the fact that kids have devices, and they are recognizing that something needs to be done here. They're just kind of not sure what. But you also spoke to a principal who is really interested in cultural change. And it's not just about what the students are doing at home. It's not just about preparing them for the future. It's about creating a campus where people are practicing basic goodness to each other, right? Like how do you create a culture where you've got all of these factors of digital lives, you've got intercultural communications going on within the campus, even if they're like 100% one race, there's like intercultural connections that are happening on campus, right? And like, how do you get people to have respectful conversations with people that they disagree with? Because disagreement, conflict is inherent to human systems. And so how do you like prepare them to do that? Now, the stuff that we have is, I'm not going to say that it's going to be some magic bullet that is going to all of a sudden fix your culture and make it so that everybody cares about each other.
Sure.
It's got to be part of a larger effort, a larger, very thoughtful effort. And we do have some partners that engage in that type of work, where World Savvy is an example of an organization that we've worked with before that does some really cool work around cultural change at schools. But in terms of the stuff that we do, if it is a principal who really values that like global connection, because what we do is through a global lens. So like some of the live virtual field trips that we have are like, for example, we've got a series of trips that we go to Taiwan off the coast of China. And what we're doing there is we're giving as much attention to the mundane as we do to the extraordinary. So what is life like there? In a way that's like visceral, meaningful, and can be easily compared to like what your life is here. And what the students will find is that there are a lot of things that are similar, and there are a lot of things that are different. And the things that are different aren't like, so strange. They're just different, right? Like they're just different ways of doing things. And what you're doing here is you're building up a couple of muscles. You're building up your ability to identify who you are, what your own identity is. You'll be able to find your place in the world, and then also develop that curiosity around other people. And the prerequisite to curiosity is humility. So if you've got people who are humble, who know who they are, and who can navigate the world in a way that shows that they have those muscles, like we are doing a whole lot to make the world a better place if you just add those things. So again, it's part of a larger cultural shift that you'll see at a school. It's going to be people who are probably thinking about these types of problems more than other people. Unfortunately, most district level people, most principals, this is not something that's like necessarily at the top of their list. So one of the things that we do is try to figure out, okay, how can we help, for example, a teacher. Teachers probably are interested in what we have to do more than other like educators are, because they tend to be really connected to their students, and so they're looking at their students every day in the eye, and they see what they need, they see what they're not getting. Districts, principals, they're focused on like test scores, on some of the like on like building, on the building, right? Like how do I make sure the building's standing tomorrow?
These
right?
doors aren't locking. The bells aren't ringing right.
Yeah, and those are all real pressures, and I respect the people who are able to address them and to solve those problems. But it tends to be teachers who are super interested in the things that we do, and so we try to figure out, okay, how can we help teachers to get the funds to pay for this type of stuff? So that's where we look into like grants and like getting it so that the price comes down, so that we meet the people who really are interested in getting this stuff in their classroom in any way that they can.
Well, and it's fascinating to me. I haven't really said too much here, but it's fascinating to me how things have advanced and yet also have not in terms of distance learning and the way we look at it. I'm very old school. So in Arkansas, back in 1998, 1999, they had a statewide initiative and rolled out distance learning equipment to every school district in the state. Now, this goes back to what you were talking about, heading down the road to the codec and, and then you got to schedule it with the, get into the scheduler and make sure all these people, everything. It was not click on Zoom and you're connected in those days. But one of the things that I took away from those very early days, when you would get these distance learning classes from different parts of Arkansas, even just in Arkansas, but then you'd also get classes that were in, other states, and you get those students. Those first couple of classes is where they kind of did what you're talking about. What are things like there? What's the weather like there? What do you do you have chickens? It was like weird, and these were high school kids, do you have this and how does this work? And, do you guys listen to this kind of music? And, and whatever else they were talking about, and building that interpersonal connection kind of before you sort of, get into the class, and then you get into the meat of the subject and what have you. And then in Arkansas anyway, that whole thing really was phasing out. I mean, it lasted maybe, I don't know what, maybe 10 years or so,
a decade,
somewhere in there. And it started phasing out, but there wasn't necessarily something to replace it. I mean, there were some online mechanisms, but, Zoom was not really a thing. I mean, it kind of was coming, but it really wasn't. And then fast forward, you have the pandemic, and suddenly, Zoom and Google Meet and, Microsoft Teams and whatever, all these, and it was, instant, here we are. And you didn't have to have, these giant big screen TVs and all this codec equipment and, all your T3 lines and whatever else you had to have, ISDN and all this other, technical stuff in order to get connected. And it's, again, it's fascinating to me to hear you now in 2024 and talking about what your organization does in terms of working with students and helping them with that digital citizenship and learning other cultures. And I don't want to say we've come full circle, because it's not really a circle, because we've rotated ahead of where we were, but we still have some of the very similar conversations. And I guess really some of those, where I guess I'm going part of with this, is that some of that is, funnily enough, the things that kind of we've always talked about. I mean, I can remember as a kid growing up in Pittsburgh, and we had, you were talking about before, where you've got students who are growing up kind of in these silos. Well, that's kind of how I grew up. I mean, we had folks over here speaking Yiddish, and we had these folks over here that were, of a different culture, and we had these other folks, and we were kind of in silos. And every once in a while, you kind of go from neighborhood to neighborhood, and definitely New York, being the big melting pot that it is very similar. So I think it's very interesting. And again, fascinating to me to look at the cultural aspects of what of the programs that you're coming along with, and especially I know in your podcast partnering with CILC, that's massive. That is huge. That's
impressive.
I mean, I can remember when CILC was first launched. That's how old I am.
35 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember that, and how scheduling those different virtual field trips and what have you to give students those experiences. And I just sitting here listening to the conversation has just been. It's a crazy trip back in time, and yet also seeing where the future is headed.
Well, I have a question. This has given me epiphany, and there's been so much go through this whole brain that it's the consistency of it, and it's not the one-off. And I think that's what I'm taking from it now is that, yes, it's the mundane. That word keeps sticking in my brain when you said it's the mundane part of it. That's, a piece of it. It's not just what you expect. And to me, that's the interesting thing. This isn't just a one-off. This isn't just a Zoom with this class in Rochester, New York, or Paris, France. This is an everyday thing. This is building, a cultural exchange that continues to grow. Am I on the right track there? I mean, you can't just have a one-off and go, hey, I did the class today for 45 minutes and I want to move here and do this now. It doesn't work that way. It's got to be, okay, we have to build on this and we have to continue building on it. And that sounds like what you guys do, especially in relation to social emotional learning and global awareness and digital citizenship. It's like we're sharing this thing and we're becoming friends across this, this divide, which is now much easier to achieve. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of them is that was another, you asked earlier about the aha moments along the way.
Yeah.
And one of the aha moments that we had was that there is a lot of value to a one-off. Some of these experiences are just that unique.
Sure.
That simply having them at all is going to be the thing that the kid talks to their parent about when they come home from school.
I get that. Yeah.
But one of the aha moments that we had was, we have this daily distance learning program in Asia. Look at what we're able to accomplish with those students. Uh-huh. In America, we were just doing one-offs in the beginning, and we were like, man, it would be so much better if we could build relationships here. And so what we have now are units that are delivered over live video. It's not every day, but you could imagine, a series of every Friday for 10 Fridays we're coming in and we're working with your students.
Yeah.
Most of the time it is just a teacher and not necessarily like other students who they're connecting with, but we are talking about how to do that and building some of those muscles. But we also work with our school in Taipei to facilitate international student collaborations, which is a whole thing. That is like to get like a sticky collaboration that's going to last like a semester is what we go for. You're not going to have a teacher dropping out halfway, where you are going to be able to align time zones, align curricula. Like it is a whole thing. But we do them. It's a lot of work, and when they come off, I mean, it's incredible, right? This is an experience that most adults haven't had, let alone 8th grade kids.
Yeah.
In terms of having a really meaningful, facilitated experience, a co-collaborating experience with students in another country. Like that's some cool stuff.
Yeah. That's very.
So the thing we haven't talked about here, and I want to get into it before we run out of time, the AI aspect of this. You guys, AI teacher professional development. I mean, that's a big deal. We all talk about it. So talk about that for the listeners a little bit about when you guys talk about AI, how do you use it? How do you train it? How do you help teachers understand it and make it valuable to them in the classroom?
Yeah, so I think most most AI trainings are going to have some basic stuff around AI, right? Like this is what AI is. Here's how to prompt. Here's what a prompt is. Here's some tips about how to prompt. These are the types of things that were pretty revolutionary. What, like 12 months ago?
Right, right.
And like most people have generally caught up. But you still, whenever you're working with a group of teachers, you still have to like have some of that stuff in there just to make sure that like everyone's kind of on board.
Sure.
Our focus is more around like the cultural competency piece, the SEL piece. Essentially, like if you look at any given task that you would like AI to do, there's kind of a spectrum of your personal experience that's going to determine how helpful AI is when it comes to you engaging with AI to co-create your solution. On this side of the spectrum, you have things that you don't know anything about. And so you're probably not going to be able to discern what a good quality answer is. And you might want to avoid using AI because you're going to get hoodwinked by just how confident it expresses everything that it says. Right?
Very well said.
Every day for me. Every day for me.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have stuff that you are so well versed in that you couldn't possibly write a good enough prompt to make it an efficient use of your time to actually use AI to do this. But in the middle, you have all sorts of things that you have some knowledge of. And so you're going to be able to view the output and see if it was a good one or not, but not so much that you don't need some help. And I think that there are a lot of these subject areas that we work in that are subject areas that teachers care a lot about, but they don't have a lot of training in. They might have some inherent understandings of what they would like to accomplish, but they don't necessarily know how they're going to do that. And so for a teacher who's going to DIY some of this stuff, whether they use it for training them up on SEL, or like how am I going to increase the global competencies, the cultural competencies of my students, the better you know what you're looking for in a situation like this, the better you can potentially come up with some solutions that are going to work for your classroom. Teachers are always looking for that tool to put in their tool belt. AI is really, really good at generating a whole lot of ideas. And so if you have that ability to discern between the good ideas and the bad ideas, it can be a really, really great creative partner. And so a lot of times people don't really think of like interpersonal stuff, the interpersonal issues, as being ones that AI can help with because it is not a person. But it does a great job approximating one. And generally, if you know what you're looking for and you have the presence of mind to think to use it for that, you can come up with a lot of solutions and then practice your own judgment to figure out which ones are good.
And I think that's where the training also comes in, because there's a lot of folks who are very interested in using AI and figuring how to use it constructively. And as you had mentioned, using to help solve or at least address, some interpersonal aspects of what they're trying to teach. But if they don't understand how to phrase things and how to tweak things once you get a response, and how to keep fine tuning until things, there's the light bulb. I think that's a huge part of it is the actual training of the user who's going to be putting in that information or asking those questions.
Absolutely. And I think that is, maybe that's 102, but that's kind of the 101 stuff, right? It's like, you gotta be able to iterate. You've gotta, one of the things I love about AI, I think it's an amazing opportunity, is the fact that it will give you crap if you give it crap. And so it requires you to not give it crap, right? Like it requires you to know what you want and like to know what you want at the beginning. Right? Like it is. I just think that is such a simple adjustment that a lot of people can make to their process of like thinking from the beginning, like what is it that you're looking for?
Yeah.
Another opportunity that I think it presents to us is that these, turns out the internet is biased. And this is trained on the internet, right? So there are a whole lot of biases that are going to be inherent to these answers that are given us. One of the exercises I saw Amanda Bickerstaff do, she's the head of AI for education. She asked ChatGPT to make a drawing of a typical CEO, and it's exactly what you thought it would be, right? And then she asked it to make a drawing of an unconventional CEO, and it's that same white guy wearing tie-dye.
Sure.
Right. Right.
I see that with four
right?
eyes and a finger coming out of his ear. Anyway.
Yeah. But it's still the white guy.
Yeah.
And we have this opportunity right now where these machines are still pretty clunky, and they'll give you stuff like that. They will not check their own bias. So you have this opportunity to illustrate to people that they are biased, right? Mm-hmm. Look how comically bad this is right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you provide people with that insight early on, then you're preparing them to be discerning and to have it, to check their own biases as they're getting these results, as these machines get better and better at what they're doing, because there's always going to have like some element of bias to them, right? And I think that's similar to the whole to needing to know what you want before you approach these things. I think the fact that these machines exist, it's giving this opportunity for us to think about how we think and how we produce things, and it's giving us the opportunity to really hone in on checking our bias, on understanding what we want, on like understanding that sometimes we're looking for a specific answer just so that we can confirm our own biases.
Yeah.
Like all of like these metacognitive processes, if you're doing it right, they're now built into the process of using AI. Mm-hmm. And so that's something, that's more like 201, right?
Right.
But that's where I think, there's a lot of, I'm a tech optimist. I think that like this stuff is going to change the world. Whether it's good or bad depends on how many tech optimists we have. Because if you believe that it will change for good, I think it will. And so you just gotta. It's a tool. Use it for good things, and it'll have some good in the world.
Yeah. So Seth, for our listeners, share information about how they can get in touch with you if they want to pick your brain. More about how to get in touch with Banyan, about your podcast. Make sure we get those titles again. Real quick, share that with our listeners.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Seth Fleischauer. The website is banyangloballearning.com. Banyan like the banyan tree, Banyan. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just ping me there. I'd love to connect with people. My podcasts are called Why Distance Learning? ? Which is a question that I get asked a lot in the course of 16 years of being in distance learning. Right?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this over distance learning?
Yeah.
And we ask that question to every single one of our guests.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the answer is simply access. You're giving access to learning experiences that students would otherwise not have access to, and that is profound and it is powerful. Mm-hmm. My other podcast is called Make It Mindful, and I would love for y'all to check it out. I really enjoy doing it. I meet some incredible people. I have some awesome guests, so please do check it out and give me some feedback too. I'd love to hear about what people like about it and what they want more of.
Yeah, Seth, we could talk another 2 hours about this. I know, because I'm learning a lot here.
Yeah.
This is really great. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll see each other in person at a conference somewhere in the next year.
Yeah, I will be at DLAC and ISTE. Are you guys going to either of those?
We do ISTE.
We do ISTE.
Yeah, we're at ISTE every year, so we'll have to catch up. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, let's do it. Last year I was in Denver. I made it to a Rockies game. That was fun.
Yeah.
We were there. Yeah, we were there. Yeah, that's awesome.
You went to the Rockies game?
No. We were at ISTE. We didn't get to go to the Rockies game. Unfortunately, our schedule was like right in between when they weren't playing. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But,
yeah.
But anyway.
Man.
They would have loved that.
It was. Yeah. Well, this year, it's San Antonio, so it's not Spurs season, but go to the Riverwalk. How's that?
There you go.
Great.
That's right. Yeah. Right down the road from us. So, yeah.
Once again, Seth, thanks for coming on the show, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, we want to thank Seth for coming on the show. Tell me that wasn't exciting. That's some really cool stuff.
Oh, yeah. And taking the trip down memory lane in terms of some of the old school distance learning stuff we did back in the day. I mean, I haven't thought about that stuff in decades. And
it's literally been decades. It has, hasn't it? Yeah.
It's all come back to the forefront.
Man, we've been doing this too long.
A long, long time.
A long, long
long, long time ago.
And people listen to the show go, listen, hey there, oldies.
That's right.
We're not boomers, so we
we are fully Gen X. So
are we Xers?
We are Xers.
So when I use Twitter, now known as X, then I'm like right in the pocket.
You are right in the pocket. You are using yourself.
Well, hot diggity.
I don't know what that means.
I don't either. But
don't read anything more into that than.
I'm going to think about it on the drive home. On the drive home, it's gonna haunt me.
It is going to haunt you.
Yeah, I'll probably wake up in the night screaming.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do that a lot anyway. So,
well,
like we talked about before, my wife puts up with a lot
of stuff. she does.
You would not believe. If it's not the dog waking us up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, it's me waking us up in the
to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I crawl.
We did say we're Gen X. Right?
I get up, go over to the side, nudge her hand.
Take me out back.
Take me out back. Open the door. I can't open it myself. I have to go out. So that's terrible.
Shoot.
Hey, listen, once again, all seriousness, all joking aside, hey, thanks, Seth. It was a great show. Really check out everything Seth has going on. And check us out on the web. You can find us at EduTechGuys. We're probably coming to a conference near you, so just watch our social medias and our website. Don't forget, edutechguys.com still exists. It's a great website, I must say. And you can get to everything you need to know, from booking on our show to merch that we have. Yeah, we never talk about our merch.
We don't talk about our merch. We got merch, people. We got stuff you can buy that has our. In fact, there are two variations. One, if you're a minimalist and you like the
original logo,
kind of original, like just kind of a microphone with the EduTech guys, there's that. And if you're more,
comical?
If you're more comical, oh, nice. Yes, we have the Peanuts / Charles M. Schultz inspired logo that we have with us sitting at microphones.
Mugs, toothbrush holders. We have a new tea cozy. I mean, it's some really great stuff out there. Just really check it out.
Get your mugs. We got your mugs right here.
And there is no tea cozy, but
there could be a tea cozy.
If we have a lot of need, we'll make sure there's a tea cozy.
If you want a tea cozy, let us know.
It's getting close to fall. We're looking at doing a full body throw. So put it on your couch, put it on your legs when you're watching the game.
That's right.
The game. Hey, listen, it's been a great show. I'm Jeff Madlock.
I'm David Henderson.
We'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the EduTech Guys, edutechguys.com.